Hello, everyone, and welcome to Be Diverse, a panel discussion on the very important topic of obtaining better business outcomes through diversity and inclusion. I'm Corinne Hutchinson, Senior Director of Enterprise Marketing here at CloudBees and Chairperson of the Diversity and Inclusion Council. I'll be your moderator for today's session, and I'm joined by 5 incredible individuals who will help us understand not only the importance of a more diverse workforce, but the tangible value we can all benefit from by having a more inclusive workplace. To kick things off, I'd like to ask each one of my panelists to go ahead and introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Raquel Tamez, and I am the CEO of SHPE, the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. And I've been serving the organization as the CEO for a little over 3 years. For those of you who may not be familiar with SHPE, SHPE is a professional society. It's a member association. We have close to 14,000 active members comprised of both students and professionals in STEM. Our organization was born in a garage in East LA in 1974. So we've been doing STEM for almost 46 years. And we have education and empowerment, professional leadership development, all year long programming. And we have 9 signature events with our national convention coming up at the end of October.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jarvis Sam, and I am the current Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion with Nike. I've been with the company for 2.5 years now, originally starting at leading the company's diversity recruitment strategy. But in my current capacity, I have the accountability for building teams to understand our overall team and talent, as well as external engagement strategy, particularly identifying how we continue to foster a culture of inclusion, build connectivity to create equitable playing fields for the future. Thrilled to be here with you all today.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Roselle, and I'm Vice President of Engineering at Polystream. Polystream is a new and innovative 3D interactive platform. I've been working in technology for over 20 years now, and I am very passionate about diversity and inclusion. I've run many events over the years. I've contributed to helping a lot of initiatives through my career in many organizations. And I think diversity and inclusion is a very important and plays a very important part in organizations.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marcus. I'm Director of our Global Technical Alliances here at CloudBees, and I focus on independent software vendors that have technical integrations with our products and use those partnerships or leverage those partnerships to drive revenue for our company.
And lastly, hi, my name is Sharice Williams. I'm a Program Director and Senior Technical DevOps and Cloud Project Tech Lead at Mantech. Mantech is in the industry trying to make sure they can provide the most best in world-class solutions to meet our customers' needs for consulting and technology services. And I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, everyone. This is such a great panel. I'm really excited about our talk today. So just to kick things off, diversity and inclusion can mean a lot of different things to different people. So just would love to understand for each one of you, what does diversity and inclusion mean to you and your organization?
The idea is paramount to SHPE. What do I mean by idea? So it's not just about diversity and inclusion. It is about inclusion, diversity, equity, and advocacy. We welcome everyone at SHPE, but our focus has been and continues to be on Hispanics and Hispanic students and professionals in STEM. So it's about educating and empowering those students and professionals through their academic and professional careers. The diversity and inclusion, equity, and advocacy is what is paramount to our organization, from the infrastructure, our policies, procedures, processes, protocols, practices, and we support our partners in idea, inclusion, diversity, equity, and advocacy, as we are a premier resource for top talent, Hispanic top talent for those partners.
Great, thank you. Jarvis?
Yeah, for me personally, diversity is the idea of bringing together a variety of different approaches and perspectives from people. This amalgamation of different experiences and backgrounds, both visible and invisible, that make each one of us unique and special. Beyond that, inclusion is how then do we provide a voice in that regard, allowing for semblances of belonging to come to the table in an amazing way. Oftentimes, we land ourselves on this thought of equality or the positioning of providing everyone the same or what we believe to be an equivalent amount of insights. However, we know that equity takes it a step beyond that. We have to understand the starting points of people, which makes it that much more necessary for companies to sharply focus on representation, understanding that only by building a team that comes from the various backgrounds that are a direct reflection of our consumer base and the world around us can we truly have great impact. But none of that can truly be seen until we foster access. The idea of simply offering opportunities to people doesn't get us there. Access means removing critical barriers, mitigating bias, and creating and taking the right steps along the way that help facilitate the right approaches to drive deeper and greater impact of not just a seat at the table, but a voice in the conversation.
Jarvis, that was amazing. I heard something in one of my last roles, which was about how can we build products for our customers when the team building the product don't represent our customers. I think diversity and inclusion has been a topic that has been a hot topic for a very long time. I would like to see in the future that we no longer need to talk about diversity and inclusion, that we just encompass every background, every diverse group within our organization, and we don't have to think about it. I think as I think about what does diversity and inclusion need to me, it's trying to get to that point where we break down the barriers and we're no longer sitting around talking around how do we make more diverse workforces, and how does it just become a thing that we do without thinking about. That's kind of where I want things to get to, and I would love in the future, and I've seen over the last 20 years in my experience that things have moved on greatly, but we've still got a long way to go. And I'm hoping by the end of my career that we'll be in that position where topics of conversation have moved on, and it's more about how do we create greater teams with different backgrounds, and it no longer becomes around diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, so diversity and inclusion is more than just checking boxes, right? It's more than just coming up with some plan and a framework. You know, they say knowledge is power. I say applied knowledge is power, right? So what is happening as far as who the stakeholders are, who is being proactive, who actually is committed to seeing what a diversity and inclusion initiative could look like, right? And I believe that it starts at the top. Everything that happens at the top manifests at the bottom. So who are our executive sponsors and where are they at with this? What is their understanding of what diversity and inclusion is? And how are they opening the door and acknowledging and giving us access to ensure that we are actually doing something about this, right? It's one thing to say, oh yeah, we have it, but it's like, no, well, what are you doing, right? And who's involved and what do we have to show for it? So I'm a big believer in, showing is, I can want to show you better than I can tell you. And so being proactive is huge, and just making sure that you're acknowledging the current situation of what's going on. I mean, this past summer has been a great example of that, right? And so those execs that are stepping up and saying, yes, we hear you. Yes, we want to do something. Yes, we want to acknowledge. Yes, we want to make sure you feel like you belong.
Sharice, what about you?
So after all those great things I just heard, so to me, diversity and inclusion resonates with just a sense of belonging. Being especially somebody as myself is actually being a Black female in a tech-dominated male culture and world. There were many times early in my career that I was put at tables where I did not have that warm and fuzzy feeling actually being like belonging. And just to go like in an anecdote type of way, one day my manager, and we had been through probably 3 program managers at this time. It was a year and a half. It was a crazy contract. But he saw me sitting there frustrated. And the reason why I was frustrated is because I was saying great ideas and people were literally picking them up and verbalizing them as their own and not giving me any credit. So he saw me get so angry. So he took me to the side and asked me, "What's wrong with you?" And I told him what it was. And he pretty much said this to me. He said, "Number one, you don't understand the uniqueness and the talent you actually have." And the second thing he said to me was, "Honestly, I don't see you as a woman, and neither do I see the rest of your coworkers as men." Because I was actually on a team, I was the only female. He said, "All I actually see is a table full of highly talented engineers. So go and engineer something." So to me, that stuck with me. And from that, I was able to actually, after a while of understanding those words, because initially I didn't, I was able to actually go shed off that weight and pretty much ascend to the place where I am in my career now.
Yeah.
That's great.
Awesome.
So next couple of questions, or next question rather, are for Jarvis and Cheryl. So you both sort of touched on this already, but want to dive a little bit deeper. What are some of the tangible business benefits that companies experience when they prioritize D&I?
So for me, consumer connection is so critical to how we think about approaches to diversity and inclusion. You are designing programs, products, and initiatives that directly impact a population of people that have self-chosen to patronize your business or said product. And as a result, having a team that provides visible representation of reflection of that community is so critical. One, it helps you avoid making mishaps. We all know the narratives of numerous companies that over time, due to a lack of representation on certain teams, have produced products digitally or physically that simply did not reflect the actual values or mission-centric approaches that these companies want to see. But furthermore, the research is super clear. Social science from Harvard Business Review, Northwestern University, McKinsey and Company, and so many more has revealed that diverse teams inherently yield greater and more innovative approaches to the work. And it's not just this amalgamation of bringing together Latino-identified talent, Black talent, Asian talent, or women to the fold. Rather, it's the fact that these communities coming together bring such a specific set of experiences to the table that as they're evaluating and understanding your product, they create newly identified innovative approaches that yield success. One of the greatest endeavors that I've seen here is when companies create sharper focus on hiring of individuals with differing abilities, as well as hiring military veterans. It inherently forces you to see your product differently in the design aesthetic, the construct, and the utility of your specific product. Having that deep consumer connection is so critical to not only delivering effective business results, but it enables diverse communities to see your continued commitment to their team and their populace. And that's where real impact and value is created.
Wow. So how do I follow on from that, Jarvis, without repeating everything you said? Because that was awesome. Basically, I've been in a room before with a bunch of other individuals, and I think having diverse workforces brings about different ideas. And sometimes you can be sat in a room and everyone's racking their brains over how to solutionize something, and then somebody will come out with something that they see as so obvious, and everybody else sitting around goes, "Why didn't I think of that?" It's those different ideas and those different creative ways of implementing something that, from a diverse workforce brings about these different ideas and different solutions. In my career, I've often sat in a room with a bunch of guys, and I have a different way of thinking about things, and that brings a different perspective. And I think, building what you said, Jarvis, working for a bank, and building products for our customers, and thinking about different ways that our customers will engage with our technology. And it's those different backgrounds and those different cultures that bring about a different way of thinking. So I can't summarize it any better than you did, Jarvis, but I echo everything you just said.
So let's talk about inclusion, right? Because diversity is definitely something important, but getting people to feel included and part of the organization is also really crucial. So how can companies go beyond simply hiring diverse talent to ensure they are included and retained?
Sure. So there are four main components to an ideal, inclusive work culture and environment. Fairness and respect. A sense where employees feel valued and they belong. Where they feel safe and open to communicate. And where they feel empowered and where they feel they can give. I think that there is an opportunity for organizations, companies, to really take a hard look at their systems and to rewire those systems in order to rewire behaviors. So taking a look at how they recruit, taking a hard look at how intentional they are at retaining that diverse talent, and actually focus on seeing that talent, that diverse talent succeed, setting them up for success. There is research out there that shows that white males are evaluated on their potential, and that people of color and women are evaluated on performance. That is a significant difference, potential versus performance. And so how do we get from equality to equity? How do we build and groom and support more inclusive leaders within an organization? Where I think there is also another opportunity for companies to be more inclusive is to actually focus on the middle, mind the middle management. Because you can have tone at the top and you can have a CEO in the C-suite committed to diversity and inclusion and put out statements of diversity inclusion and statements of solidarity. You can have your employee resource groups, your business resource groups, but where there's opportunity, and I think in those instances where companies are not getting it right, they are not paying attention to their middle management. The middle managers are the ones making the decisions on who is being recruited, who's being retained, who's being evaluated on performance versus who's being evaluated on potential. So oftentimes companies overestimate their inclusiveness. So I think it's there are various things that an organization can do to be more inclusive, but at the end of the day, I think it's holding middle managers accountable.
Absolutely. That's one of the key things that I think is really important, because if we don't have this permeating throughout the organization, it's never really going to be successful.
That's
one
right.
of the other components of that is definitely around mentorship. So when we think about this critical area, especially at senior leadership levels, and Sharice, I'm going to ask this question to you. Now that many people are switching to remote work, how can teams adapt their mentorship practices to ensure that they aren't leaving out these underrepresented groups?
So one of the things I try to strive is the use of our communication tools that we have all throughout. So on corporate side of the house of Mantech, we have Slack, all the bells and whistles. On a government contract I'm working with, we have Teams. So before, when we were in the workplace, we used to actually just have, conversations and things would actually happen organically. But because of the fact now that I'm high risk myself and I have other individuals that are too, I don't want to put anybody's health at risk. So we're all working, and doing all that we can at home. So one of the things I try to still instill in at least my team is that you're never alone, number one. Number two, if you need to work with someone else, you have the ability to bring somebody into a DM in the conversation and you guys can hash it out. Other things I've tried to do during the lunch hours, kind of have like a jam session with the whole team so we can just shoot the breeze and talk about anything. Because at the end of the day, I strive to make sure that everyone has that sense of belonging and family on the team. And that fosters, I would say, the richness and the fullness of the ideas that everybody comes to the table with. And we're able to come up with those cool, complex solutions that our government client are looking for.
Absolutely. And Cheryl, one of the things you and I talked about earlier, not just around the mentorship, but also around networking and this idea of sponsorship, right? So how important it is to not only have key mentors at leadership level, but really have sponsorship and agency. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I was actually speaking at DevOps last year, and we were talking about the importance of a mentor. Mentors are really important and can really help you with your career. And I think equally as important as a mentor is a sponsor. I think not many people know what a sponsor is, and I'm actually quite amazed when I bring up the topic of sponsorship that people can't quite don't quite understand what a sponsor is. So my perception of a sponsor is, and I actually attribute most of my career to having really strong sponsorship. Somebody who's not in the room, that a project or a role will come up, and somebody's like, actually, Cheryl will be a really good fit for that. I'm not there to represent myself. Purely my work speaks for me. And I've had people come up to me and go, hey, we were just talking about you in this meeting, and somebody put you forward for this role and thinks you'll be really good at it, or this is a great project for you. And when you're not able to represent yourself, you need somebody who's gonna fight your corner for you. And that's a two-way thing. You don't go out and seek them as sponsor. You don't go, hey, will you be my sponsor? Can you help me if you hear any jobs coming up or anything that's really awesome that you think I'll be really great at? I think you have to be. I think sponsorship comes from installing trust and doing a great job. And if you're doing a great job, it should speak for yourself. It should speak for itself. But also on top of that, you should try to create a larger network. I'm very much involved in kind of trying to encourage people to network outside of their organization. I'm massive on kind of external networking. So COVID is killing me that I can't get out there and meet people. I love coming to events like DevOps World, where I can meet people and have conversations that I wouldn't normally have. And sometimes sponsorship extends larger than your organization, larger than your current role. I've had people contact me and go, actually, your name just came up in conversation and there's a role going at this organization. We think you'll be awesome for it. I think it's really important to make a mark on people and leave, a lasting impression of, I'm Cheryl, I'm good at this. And you shouldn't seek sponsorship. It should be more organic than that. So keep doing an awesome job. Let people know that you're doing an awesome job. And hopefully people will praise you outside of that. Kind of equally to that is mentors. Mentors and sponsors are very different, but having a really strong mentor has also helped me at times of difficulty when I felt that I was challenged and that I needed somebody to kind of guide me to the next direction. I've always looked for a mentor that would challenge me. If I've just got a yes person for my mentor, I'm not going to get anything out of it. I also have mentorees that I speak to on a regular cadence, where I try and challenge them. I ask them questions. What are you doing about that? Rather than sitting there and kind of telling me what, all your woes and what's wrong in the world, how are you trying to put that right? Challenge yourself to work on those issues. Don't expect everything to be given to you on a plate. You have to go out and work for things. So sponsorship, really important, and also mentorship as well. And mentorship longer term can turn into sponsorship. So somebody who's been your mentor can equally be a sponsor in the future for you.
One thing that I would add about networking, I think it's important that you nurture those relationships. It really is about the quality of the relationship as opposed to the quantity of the people that you might just meet and exchange business cards with. Relationships are the currency of the workplace, and that you actually have to invest in relationships. And it is very true that it's not so much what you know, it's who you know, and more importantly, it's who knows you. I'm often surprised when I sit on panels like this and someone will say, be your authentic self without more. That's not responsible. It's important for you, yes, to be your authentic self, but you also have to understand the rules of engagement of your organization. And a mentor helps you understand what those unwritten rules of engagement are, so that you don't sabotage your own success by being your quote unquote authentic self.
Absolutely. And I think one of the challenges too that especially, women in tech, people of color in tech especially face, how can you really be your true authentic self at work sometimes? We wear many masks, right? And there's lots of conversations around the different masks that we wear. But oftentimes it's a challenge for us to really be truly who we are at work every single day, because we come with us, with a whole different burden of struggle that isn't necessarily understood. And so I think that's a really important point that we remind ourselves of, right? It's It's not really as empowering for everybody to truly be able to bring their true selves to work. They have to be able to understand how to do that within the context of the company that they work for and the culture that they're operating within. So those are great points. So Marcus, my next question is to you, because we've talked a lot about, what is, the value of diversity and inclusion. And I know there are a lot of organizations that try to get programs into their companies. Not every company does this, but there are some that do. I've seen it done really poorly at certain places, and I've seen it done in really, really great and effective ways. What are some positive examples of D&I programs done right?
So, for the positive outcomes, regarding D&I initiatives, I think, it's really important to understand the organization that you're working in. Previously I had the honor and the privilege of being the president of our Latino chapter, and I'm Latino, so Mexican, Puerto Rican background, and I thought I was very, very honored to be in that position and to just be the chosen representative to figure out, what are the different groups in our org facing. Right, there's 4 different businesses. A lot of different things happen in between those different legs of businesses. So it's really important to understand, what are our peers facing? What are some of the challenges they're facing? What's working, right? And to really understand the mental math and see how can we learn from that, and then come out with a list. And obviously we can't tackle everything on that list, but pick our top 3 and really use that as the initiatives that we want to achieve for the year.
So Jarvis, how do you hold organizations accountable for their diversity and inclusion initiatives so they don't just become a quick fix? How do we make sure that, especially in light of everything that's going on right now currently in the United States, we don't want this to become just, hey, we're going to put out a statement quickly, or we're going to put up, a Black social media banner really quickly for a day or so. How do we make sure that we're holding businesses accountable to having long-term solutions?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Corinne. Accountability standards are what allows organizations to either do exceptionally well around diversity and inclusion programming, or unfortunately crash and burn. And there's a couple of different components that we leverage when thinking about accountability. It's more than just movement of the needle from a representation perspective. While seeing those quantitative metrics is critical, it gives you an indication on how you're performing relative to the past of your own company, as well as relative to benchmarks externally. It enables us to see the importance of who and how we hire talent, who and how we promote, and who and how we retain great diverse talent. But representation is only one component of thinking through leadership accountability. From there, we have to embed conversations of diversity, equity, and inclusion into everything that we do across the spectrum of a variety of different talent processes and talent decisions. What this means is diversity programming cannot just simply run parallel to the work. It has to be the work. We often think about business decisions in the form of a dichotomy. It's the what and the how of work. But the what is often viewed as, did you achieve your business results or not? And the how typically tends to exist on a spectrum of generalized performance. Here's the challenge. Most companies evaluate diversity and inclusion and accountability standards therein as part of the how. So it leads to a space where people can partially do great work in this space or not at all. Positioning it as part of the business or part of the what creates it where this is a foundational component of your business objectives or your business results, meaning that duality of did you perform yes or no becomes that much more critical. There's not a gradient for how well you're doing or not doing in the work. Rather, it is saying this is a zero-sum game. Are you performing relative to the diversity initiatives of the company or not? And if not, create a clearly defined series of standards for what that type of mandatory engagement actually looks like. When we think about what accountability truly is, it is the effective measurement and monitoring of an individual's results to achieve a particular outcome. Additionally, when we think about employee engagement surveys, it's often utilized to understand employee sentiment or employee happiness. However, most companies typically time those surveys at a time that typically will lead to people having more positive results than not. Embedding within that an inclusion index that can be benchmarked against both internal and external data sources of practice will help us see how people are performing at the macro level of the enterprise with that middle management component, which was outlined earlier as such a critical component by Raquel of how we engage and amplify the impact. but also that of our more junior or early in career employees. Bridging the gap around both of those conversations is going to be that much more critical and opens the space for us to talk more qualitatively. This is the employee field. People often have diversity and inclusion frameworks set up where they'll define diversity as what are we doing to secure talent and bring great talent here. And inclusion is really what are we doing once they get here. It's a flawed approach though. It must be integrated throughout the whole way. From the first moment that you say hello to a talent or your talent attraction or recruitment marketing approach, you have to be thinking about the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion. A prime example, Nike happily attends SHPE every single year. And we have the great and distinct opportunity to work closely with Raquel and her team. It is critical, though, that when we show up at this conference, that we bring Nike employees who are of Hispanic or Latino descent, who can talk about that experience at and within the company. Simply saying we're going to bring an amalgamation or a variety of other different talents and hope for the best or hope it works shows a lack of integration from talent attraction to the creation of alums at your company. This is where accountability exists, looking through the entire lens and defining roles of what integration looks like. And how do we ensure that we're building correct, effective, and easily measured and monitored approaches along the way?
Oh, there's always work to be done. That's for sure. There's lots of work to be done. So Charisse and Cheryl, next question for the two of you, since you two are the engineers in the room, would love to kind of understand on technical teams, what are some things that technical teams, engineering teams can do to make sure they are building a more diverse team and allowing for more diverse schools of thought within their organizations?
At first, I would say be intentional on who you're hiring. Not just look at the quals, but actually look at how you could sprinkle more diversity into your teams. Me, with being in the situation I was in, with literally being on a team with 20 guys, and I was a lonely female, I make sure that when I'm actually looking to hire for seats, I'm not just going for that, that top tier talent that somebody might say that's the guy. I'll also look at even the middle tier, because especially at Mantech, we have a lot of free training like Skillsoft and things of that nature. So it's really easy to get somebody that might not have the 100% skill list that you're looking for, and give them 2 or 3 months to actually go and get those skill sets up, and actually that makes them more of, I would say, a loyal employee to the company. And they usually produce a better work product because they feel as though they are actually there and they belong.
So for me, I actually started out my career. I left school without any qualifications, and I started off as a gym instructor. I took a job at Microsoft purely because my brother worked in the building where they had the call centers, and he was working. He worked for Microsoft, and Apple were hiring. And I started out as a receptionist and just had a curiosity for technology. Before long, I was fixing issues and not passing them through as I should do to our kind of third line support. So my curiosity is something that I try to encourage in others. I think a curiosity, and I think Raquel, you touched on this area earlier, having a curiosity for technology is something that you can't teach somebody to have. It's something that's installed with them. So if you see somebody with a curiosity, it's feed that curiosity. Throughout my entire career, every step that I've taken is that I've tried to push myself. And I try to push myself, and I aspire to be the next level, or I want to teach myself a new technology. And I try to encourage other people to try and follow in similar footsteps. Everybody has their own path, and it's trying to inspire others on your journey. So I talk a lot about my history and where I started out and kind of my humble beginnings back in my days of working at a gym to working for Apple to where I am today. And I think I've gained a lot of skills, and I try to use that to encourage others to push themselves in the right direction. So I think, as Charisse, as you was talking about teaching people, I think there are a lot of organizations that have valuable employees that actually could be retrained to work in maybe technology. They have transferable skills that think, hang on a minute, I could never work in tech because I have to be a developer. I have to be an engineer. There are so many different arenas within technology that could take those skills from and transfer them from other vocations. And I think sometimes organizations are blindsided to doing that. They feel that they always have to hire from outside, that they don't have to promote within. I think supporting, I've taken many engineers under my wing who might not have the experience, but again, going to that point of curiosity, they have that curiosity to learn. And you can feed somebody all the technical skills. You can't teach them to have that aptitude to learn. So for me, I can always teach people to do the job, but I can't teach them to be curious and hungry. So taking that hunger and transpiring that into the workplace is actually, you can grow some real talent. And I'm very proud of some of the people that have worked for me, just by giving them the opportunity, whereas before they might not have. I worked with an organization when I worked at Microsoft called Year Up, and it would take people that wouldn't necessarily be able to attend university or college, and it would give them a program where they could actually spend a year kind of learning technology and how to work in the workforce, and then would inject them into an organization like I was working for Yammer, just part of Microsoft, and we would take them on and we would give them the opportunity to do some work experience. And they had such hunger and drive in them. And we've got some very successful individuals that have gone on to do some great things and carry on working for startups in the Bay Area, purely because they might have not had the opportunity elsewhere if they hadn't been given the great opportunity and they had that hunger to learn. So yeah, I think just feed that hunger that people have and train people up with them within.
So I'll just add on to Cheryl's commentary. It's quite great. It's this idea of getting companies to see you can do all of the work with your job descriptions at attempting to neutralize the language so that it appeals to a variety of different genders, a variety of different races and ethnicities, to attempt to attract more talent in the right way. Where I think a lot of companies lose sight of is the idea of in lieu of. Almost every job description that we see says bachelor's degree in XYZ. Or equivalent experience in lieu of. And so often we don't actually see companies focusing on that and providing equal weight to that point in that commentary. Are we just putting in lieu of on job descriptions for governmental requirements, or are we doing the right thing to actually attract, engage, and develop this talent? And I will tell you, historically, from what I've seen, the retention rate for these populations is much higher than that of the general populace, if you will, or those with 4-year degrees or even advanced degrees beyond 4 years. And so investing in taking the time to drive and engage this talent not only positions you better as a company, because it forces you to rethink your approach to on-the-job training. It forces you to rethink your approach to onboarding so that you're better serving communities in the right way. By doing this, you're uplifting your entire workforce, rethinking your approach to learning and development and training, while also offering access and opportunity to groups who more than just deserve it, but contribute so incredibly to your company.
Wow. And he did it again, Corinne.
I'm sure he did. It's amazing. He's waxing poetic over here. Well, so this has been really a great conversation, and I'm sure we could spend several more hours on this topic, but I just want to make sure we leave our audience with some tangible things that they can do. So as we think about where different organizations might be on their D&I journey, or where different individuals might be within their organization, what are some resources that folks can tap into to assist them on this journey? And Raquel, I'll start with you.
Sure. With professional societies and member associations like SHPE, NSBE, the National Society of Black Engineers, SWE, the Society of Women Engineers, ACES, the American Indian Science and Engineer Society. I think oftentimes companies, well-intentioned, want to go out and create new programs and try and boil the ocean, when in fact there are organizations that they can support and partner with. We have the talent. We have the programs, we have the events, we have the community engagement opportunities. So we're here. I oftentimes am flummoxed when human resource and talent acquisition and university relations representatives say, well, we don't know where the talent is. I have 14,000 members of talent. NSBE has more, SWE has even more than that. So I think looking at what already exists, looking at those organizations that are doing it and doing it well, that have credibility, in competency in diverse and inclusion, and in diverse talent in particular.
Could I take a more practical approach? I would like to challenge the listeners of this panel to go find somebody in your organization to be a sponsor for. You know, if you think somebody's done a great job, if you think that somebody has real potential, you don't have to be a senior manager to do that. You could be at any level in the organization. Even being in the room with somebody and saying, hey, actually, they've done a great job recently. What about putting them forward for that promotion? And I think being an advocate and a sponsor for someone is so important that I would challenge everybody to do that within their organizations. And then hopefully we can encourage others and inspire others to do the same thing.
That's great. Sharice, what about you? What kind of advice or tips do you have for our audience?
One of the books I actually found was called Belonging at Work by Rhodes Perry, MPA. And I've only gotten through about, I would say probably half of it, but so far I've gotten really enlightened about what it actually means to really be intentional with trying to do diversity and inclusion and starting that in the workplace.
Marcus, what about you? What are some resources that you would recommend for folks?
Yeah, so some resources that I would recommend is, start small. It doesn't always have to be join an ERG, right, or a BRG, or whatever group you may offer that's available at the job, right? It could be as simple as a question to your manager, or to your friend, or to your peer. Hey, what are you reading? That is helping you understand how to be more open or aware of where people come from, right, and their backgrounds, right? What book do you recommend to get started? What did you do? Right? Maybe ask them about their experience and why. Why were you compelled to figure out this, what D&I means, and how was it, to make you a better leader? Was it for your career? Was it to be a better person? Like, you can start as little as those, just having the conversation.
The biggest things that companies can do right now is to integrate approaches to education in their work. Conversations around D&I education, cultural awareness, and cultural competence have reached their peak in light of rhetoric surrounding the Black Lives Matter movement. However, it's critical that companies continue this conversation forward and build it into the ethos and infrastructure of what they're building, so that it's beyond just an in vogue moment of the status quo and actually something that can create real-time impact. By education, I mean change what it is that your staff is influenced by and the types of trainings and programming that you're offering them. This is more than just unconscious bias awareness training or giving everybody the implicit association test every now and then. Rather, it is conditioning them to key works in literature, media, online or otherwise, where they can fully take advantage of and learn about cultures different from themselves. A couple of texts that I recommend, particularly as we're all working to navigate and learn more about the Black experience for our companies, include The Race Card by Randall Kennedy, On Intersectionality by Kimberly Crenshaw, a UCLA professor who defines and understands that the experiences of folks who find themselves at the intersection of multiple marginalized communities creates even more challenges than what they've seen previously. Finally, I definitely recommend you checking out the essay known as Home Place by Bell Hooks, where Bell goes on to describe the experience of Black individuals, where the home place is a point of resistance and at the same time, a place of comfort and engagement. Going beyond that and challenging what we consume in terms of media, what we put on our Netflix, what we put on our Hulu to learn more about different cultures is so critical to how we show up in the workplace. Find moments to integrate this and then create a forum for people to have open conversations. Such a small act of engagement with your teams can go a long way to let people know that you're hearing them, you desire their opinion, and you want to see them be truly impactful.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us on this panel today. This has just been an absolutely riveting conversation. As I mentioned, we could definitely go on for hours, especially since we know that companies that invest in diversity and inclusion tend to see about a 35% uptick in revenue. So we know that this is really important to the company's bottom line, not only for better business outcomes, but for a more positive and diverse workforce as well. So thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts and experiences. It's really been a pleasure. Have a good day.
Thank you, Corinne. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.